Welcome to Propeller Breeze, the show for student pilots, sim fans, and everyone chasing that first solo and beyond. All information in this podcast is for entertainment and general knowledge only. Always verify with certified flight instructors or regulatory authorities before attempting anything mentioned here.
You know, when you're first learning to fly, there's this intense expectation of mechanical precision.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you pull the yoke back, the houses get smaller, you push it forward, they get bigger. It feels entirely like a physics equation. Thrust, drag, lift, weight.
Yeah, it's very binary, especially in the beginning.
Right. You master the inputs and the machine responds. It's comforting.
It is. We really crave that predictability. I mean, especially when we're thousands of feet in the air, right? We want to believe that if we just follow the mechanical steps perfectly, the outcome is guaranteed.
But then, you look at actual aviation safety data and suddenly that comforting predictability just completely vanishes. You realize pretty quickly that the most complex, the most unpredictable, and frankly, the most dangerous piece of equipment in that airplane, it's not the engine.
Right.
It's not the avionics, and it's not the weather outside. It's you.
Yeah, the statistics on this are honestly sobering. When you look at the root causes of aviation accidents, human conditions, things like fatigue, complacency, stress, cognitive overload, they're documented as a primary contributor to more than 70% of accidents.
70%?
Over 70%, yeah.
Yeah.
The human being in the left seat is basically the ultimate wild card.
Which is a massive number. And, if you're a student pilot listening to this, maybe you're working toward your private pilot license right now, that number might sound incredibly intimidating.
Oh, for sure. Sounds like you're set up to fail.
Exactly. But looking at the source material we're covering in today's deep dive on human factors in aviation, understanding that 70% is actually your biggest advantage.
Right. It's empowering.
It really is. Instead of just grinding through steep turns and stalls, learning how your own brain betrays you in the cockpit, that's a shortcut. You're empowering yourself to become a fundamentally safer pilot from day one. So, to really get into this, we need to completely toss out a phrase that's been used in aviation for decades.
Ooh. Yes.
Pilot error.
Pilot error. It's such a loaded term.
It is. And historically, it's done way more harm than good. I mean, for a long time, if an airplane crashed, the investigation would just, stamp pilot error on the final report and close the book.
Just blame the dead guy, basically.
Essentially, yeah. It implies this incredibly narrow, punitive view of a crash. It suggests that a single bad decision, or just one momentary lapse in judgment by the pilot, was the completely isolated cause of the tragedy. It feels like such an easy out for investigators. Like if you're driving a car and you crash because the dashboard was designed so poorly that the steering wheel hid the speedometer,
right,
and they just say, well, driver error, you were speeding. It ignores the system that set you up to fail just because you were the last one to touch the controls.
That is exactly the core issue. And modern aviation has completely shifted away from that. We've moved to the phrase human factors related.
Which sounds a lot broader.
It is. It recognizes a fundamental truth about accidents. A single decision almost never leads to an accident on its own. It's always a series of events, a cascade of poorly designed systems, interruptions, and then the resultant decisions that all link together to form what we call an error chain.
So if we're looking at human factors, we're not just telling pilots to, get 8 hours of sleep and eat a good breakfast. We're looking at the entire environment surrounding them.
Oh, it goes so much deeper than getting a good night's sleep. The field of human factors is this massive multidisciplinary science. It incorporates psychology, engineering, industrial design, operations research, even anthropometry.
Wait, anthropometry, like human body measurements?
Exactly. It asks questions like, is the flap lever shaped so similarly to the landing gear lever that a pilot who is under immense stress will instinctively just grab the wrong one?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've seen those older cockpit designs where everything is literally just a row of identical black toggle switches.
It's a nightmare for human factors.
Under stress, your brain just stops reading labels and just grabs a switch.
Right, and that's a failure of industrial design.
Yeah.
That's not just a failure of the pilot's attention.
Yeah.
Our source material notes that the FAA has actually made human factors a top priority across the entire aviation spectrum.
So not just for the pilots.
No, it's a major focus in aviation maintenance, air traffic control, all of it. Like, if a mechanic misreads a maintenance manual because the typography is confusing.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, or if an ATC controller assigns converging headings because their radar interface is cluttered, That starts the error chain hours, or even days, before the pilot even steps into the plane.
So if the entire aviation community is spending millions of dollars trying to design systems that protect humans from our own natural limitations, I mean, that brings up a really crucial question for the student pilot listening.
What's that?
How do we figure out which humans are actually most at risk inside that system? Like, are some people just biologically wired to be dangerous in a cockpit?
To get to the bottom of that, the source material actually points us back in time. We're talking about some of the earliest behavioral research on risk-taking.
Okay.
Long before modern aviation psychology, researchers were trying to figure out if certain people were simply predisposed to getting into accidents. There's this fascinating study from 1951.
1951.
Yeah, published by Elizabeth Meckham Fuller and Helen B. Bone out of the University of Minnesota.
Wait, 1951? We're talking mid-century psychology here. What exactly were they studying back then that applies to flying an airplane today?
Well, they studied a school of 600 second graders.
Oh, sorry, 7-year-olds.
7-year-olds.
How does observing a bunch of second graders on a playground translate to an adult flying a multi-million-dollar machine?
Because the researchers wanted to isolate the foundational innate personality traits that lead to risk-taking, they wanted to see it before decades of adult socialization to sort of mask those traits.
Oh, I see. Before society teaches them how to hide it.
Exactly. So out of those 600 children, who all had similar family demographics, they isolated two very specific groups. One group of 55 kids were categorized as accident repeaters.
The ones constantly in the nurse's office?
Yes. Scraped knees, broken arms, always getting hurt. And then the other group of 48 kids were completely accident-free.
Let me guess. The accident-free kids were the ones absolutely terrified of the monkey bars, just sitting quietly in the corner reading a book.
The data paints almost exactly that picture. The accident-free group showed a superior knowledge of safety rules. They were considered industrious, very cooperative with others, and notably, they were not considered physically inclined.
Right. There were rule followers who just avoided physical risk entirely.
Contrast them with the accident repeater group. Those kids actually had much better gymnastic skills and physical coordination.
Really?
Yeah, but psychologically, they were categorized as aggressive and impulsive. They demonstrated rebellious behavior when they were put under stress. They were poor losers, and they strongly desired to be the center of attention.
So basically the kids doing backflips off the swings, pushing the absolute limits of their physical ability, and then throwing a massive tantrum if they miss the landing.
Precisely. Now, if you take this 1951 data and blindly apply it to adult recruitment, you might form a very dangerous hypothesis.
You'd say, let's only hire the corner sitters.
Right. You might assume that to build a safe pilot force, you should exclusively hire the unathletic, overly cautious rule followers and completely ban the physically coordinated, aggressive individuals.
But wait, that makes no sense. I mean, you need physical coordination to fly an airplane, and if an engine catches fire at 2,000 feet, you do not want a pilot who is overly cautious and just freezes up.
No, you don't.
You want someone who takes immediate, aggressive charge of the situation.
Which is exactly the false inference the researchers warned against. As the source material points out, it's practically impossible to build a pilot force out of only one personality type anyway, because pilots are drawn from the general population.
Sure.
And some of those accident repeater traits, like wanting to take control of the situation or having high physical confidence, they're incredibly useful in aviation if they're channeled correctly.
So it sounds like we can't just rely on our innate personality to keep us safe. Like, if you have those impulsive, risk-taking tendencies naturally, you can't just turn them off. You have to actively build mental firewalls against them.
That is the absolute core of modern flight training. Teaching good aeronautical decision-making is vital because it trains the brain's executive function to override those natural limbic system impulses.
Especially when things get crazy.
Exactly. Especially when task saturation hits and your stress levels spike.
Task saturation is such a killer. And since we know we have to train decision-making to overcome our natural traits, let's look at how poor decision-making actually manifests in the real world.
Let's do it.
Our sources highlight a really sobering case study by Dr. Patrick R. Villette. He refers to the pilot in this case study as Captain Everyman.
And that pseudonym, Everyman, is highly intentional. This is not a story about a uniquely terrible or, malicious pilot. This is a pilot who falls victim to the everyday cognitive traps that any of us could fall into if we just let our guard down for a minute. Dr. Villette uses Everyman's history to demonstrate how aircraft accidents are caused by that chain of poor choices and psychological blind spots, rather than just a single catastrophic failure of flying skill.
Okay, let's walk through Everyman's saga. It begins with a gear-up landing accident. The source doesn't give us a ton of details on that specific crash, but it kind of establishes a baseline for his behavior, right? He's prone to missing major checklist items.
Yes.
But his next accident is where we really see the psychology of the error chain in terrifying detail.
It really is a textbook error chain. So Everyman is flying a Beech 58P Baron. It's a complex twin-engine aircraft. He's flying solo, taxiing out on the ramp, just running through his flows.
Just a normal day.
Just a normal day. But during the taxi, he gets interrupted by a radio call from the dispatcher.
Oh man, if you're a student pilot right now, think about how many times you've been holding short, running your engine run-up, and air traffic control suddenly calls you with an amended clearance.
It happens all the time.
You scramble to copy it down, and when you look back at your checklist, you've completely lost your place.
Psychologists actually call that a prospective memory failure.
Prospective memory failure.
Yeah. You hold an intention to do something in the future, like finishing a checklist, but an immediate distraction completely wipes that intention from your working memory.
It just overwrites it.
Exactly. And in Everyman's case, this interruption causes him to neglect a critical item, the fuel crossfeed check. He gets distracted and leaves the right fuel selector in the crossfeed position before taking off.
Okay, for anyone training in a single-engine Cessna or Piper right now, leaving a twin-engine fuel selector in crossfeed means both engines are going to be pulling fuel from the exact same tank.
In this case, the left wing's tank.
Right, instead of each engine drawing from its own respective wing.
So he takes off, entirely unaware of the time bomb he just set. He gets aloft, he's cruising along, and after a while, he notices the airplane has a tendency to roll to the right.
Well, yeah, because both engines are sucking fuel out of the left wing. Fuel is heavy.
Very heavy, roughly 6 pounds per gallon.
Right, so the left wing is getting progressively lighter, while the right wing is staying completely heavy with unburned fuel. That heavy right wing is just constantly pulling the plane down on that side.
And this is the critical juncture. The airplane is communicating with him. It's telling him something is physically wrong with the weight distribution.
But he doesn't investigate the root cause, does he?
No. He just cranks in some aileron trim to force the plane to fly straight, completely oblivious to the fact that he is draining his left tank dry.
Why would a pilot do that? Just trim away a major warning sign.
It's a textbook example of confirmation bias combined with cognitive simplification. The brain does not want to deal with a complex, potentially terrifying problem like a fuel system malfunction while you're flying solo.
So it just lies to itself?
Pretty much. It seeks the simplest, least stressful explanation. He likely assumed it was just a minor aerodynamic quirk, or maybe a mistrimmed control surface. He band-aided the symptom because diagnosing the actual disease required a level of mental effort he just wasn't prepared to give.
Which leads to the climax of this flight. 2 hours in, Everyman is flying along a deep canyon gorge.
A terrible place to have a problem.
Suddenly, the right engine quits.
Now he is in a high workload emergency. He starts troubleshooting, desperately trying to figure out why his right engine just died. And while he's completely task-saturated trying to restart that right engine, the left engine quits too.
Because the left tank, which has been feeding both engines for 2 hours, is now completely empty.
It's bone dry.
He turned a complex twin-engine aircraft into a very heavy glider over a canyon, all because of one radio call on the taxiway.
It's chilling. Now, he does manage to glide the aircraft onto a river sandbar.
Which is impressive.
It is. That proves he had decent fundamental flying skills. He could fly the plane. But the plane ends up sinking into 10 feet of water. He survived, but the aircraft was destroyed.
You would think surviving a dual-engine failure into a river would fundamentally change a pilot's habits forever. Like, you'd never miss a checklist item again.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
But Everyman's story does not end there.
It gets worse.
It continues several years later. Everyman is now flying a de Havilland Twin Otter. He's out delivering supplies to a remote location. He returns to his home base and touches down on the runway. But immediately upon landing, the aircraft veers sharply to the left, completely departs the runway, and crashes into a marsh 375 feet away.
Oh, man.
It caused massive damage to the airframe and the engines.
And when the accident investigators come through the wreckage this time, they find the nose wheel steering tiller in the fully deflected position.
Yes.
Meaning the moment those wheels touched the pavement, the plane was steering hard left at high speed.
Placing that tiller in the neutral position is a required boldface item on two different checklists, the after takeoff checklist and the before landing checklist.
And he missed it on both.
He missed it on both.
How does someone miss the exact same item on two different checklists in the same flight?
It's often due to expectation bias and checklist fatigue. When you fly the same route in the same plane hundreds of times, your eyes start to just sort of glaze over the checklist.
You're just going through the motions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You look at the words, but your brain assumes the switches are in the correct position because they always have been before. You stop verifying and you start expecting.
Everyman's story proves you are always just one distraction away from a chain of events. He wasn't a pilot who lacked the physical skill to fly. He was a pilot who failed to manage the cognitive systems that actually keep a flight safe.
The source material asks a very pointed question here. Is Everyman accident-prone or just unlucky? I mean, most pilots have made minor mistakes similar to getting distracted on a taxiway.
Right, we've all dropped the ball momentarily.
But usually the error chain is broken before a mishap. A warning light catches your eye, a flight instructor catches the mistake, or honestly, you just get lucky.
So how do we transition from a Captain Everyman to a truly safe pilot? What separates the people who catch the errors from the ones who end up in a marsh?
Well, the research shows that a successful pilot possesses three very specific cognitive abilities.
Okay.
The ability to concentrate deeply, the ability to manage workloads without getting overwhelmed, and the ability to monitor and perform several simultaneous tasks.
It's standard pilot stuff.
Right. And the latest psychological screenings used in commercial aviation, they specifically test applicants for their ability to multitask, measuring how accurately they process conflicting information under time pressure.
Because you have to fly the plane, navigate, talk to ATC, and monitor your engine gauges all at once without dropping the ball.
Exactly. But the FAA wanted to look beyond just multitasking. They wanted to know if there were deeper personality traits that flagged a dangerous pilot before they ever got to the airlines.
The psychological red flags.
Yes. So the FAA oversaw an incredibly extensive research study for exactly that predictive purpose. They surveyed over 4,000 pilots. Half of these pilots had perfectly clean records, and the other half had been involved in an aviation accident.
Okay, so a massive data set.
Huge. And by comparing the psychological profiles of the two groups, they found 5 distinct traits that were overwhelmingly present in the accident-prone pilots.
Okay, if you are listening to this on your way to the airport, I really want you to mentally check yourself against this list. Be brutally honest with yourself. What is the first red flag?
The first trait found in accident-prone pilots is a disdain toward rules.
This is the pilot who thinks the regulations are just, like, suggestions, or that the standard operating procedures are just for beginners.
Psychologists call this the normalization of deviance.
Normalization of deviance.
Right. If you skip a checklist item once and nothing bad happens, your brain learns that the rule is unnecessary. So you start skipping it regularly until that deviation literally becomes your new normal.
Wow. Okay, the second trait is going to catch a lot of people off guard. I know it surprised me. There is a very high correlation between accidents on a pilot's flying record and safety violations on their driving record.
Yes.
So you're saying my speeding tickets predict my likelihood of crashing an airplane?
Believe it or not, yes.
Yeah.
It comes down to a concept called risk homeostasis. Everyone has an internal thermostat for how much risk they are comfortable with.
Okay.
If your internal thermostat is set so high that you constantly speed, tailgate, and run yellow lights in your car just to feel normal.
You're going to bring that into the cockpit.
Exactly. You bring that exact same risk acceptance mentality with you. The vehicle changes, but your baseline tolerance for danger remains exactly the same.
That is wild, and that leads directly into the third trait, right? Accident-prone pilots frequently fall into the thrill and adventure-seeking personality category.
Yeah, flying is inherently engaging, but for these pilots, the routine of safe flight is just not enough. They require a constant dopamine loop.
The adrenaline junkies.
They're the ones who get a thrill out of scud running under low clouds, or pushing their fuel minimums just to see if they can stretch the flight.
Which is terrible, because good flying should actually be kind of boring. Like, if your heart is pounding, you've probably made a mistake.
Well said.
What's the fourth trait?
The fourth trait deals with cognitive processing. Accident-prone pilots are impulsive rather than methodical and disciplined. And this applies to both how they gather information and how they execute actions.
We're talking about system 1 versus system 2
Both
thinking, right?
Yes, exactly.
Instead of engaging their slow, logical brain to methodically check the weather briefings and calculate weight and balance, they use their fast, emotional brain. They just glance at the sky, say, looks fine, and take off.
And when an emergency happens in the air, that same impulsivity causes them to snap react. They just start pulling levers and flipping switches based on gut instinct.
Instead of taking a breath, identifying the problem, and actually running the emergency checklist.
Exactly. Which brings us to the fifth and final trait. A disregard for, or a tendency to underutilize, outside sources of information.
The lone wolf mentality.
Pretty much. This is rooted in ego protection and a hazardous attitude of invulnerability. These pilots ignore their co-pilots, their flight attendants, flight instructors, and air traffic control.
They just isolate themselves.
They isolate themselves from the very safety nets designed to provide them with critical perspective, because they honestly believe their own situational awareness is superior to everyone else's.
If we look back at Captain Everyman, he exhibited almost all of these.
He really did.
I mean, he had that impulse to just act cranking in aileron trim instead of methodical troubleshooting, and he completely underutilized the basic information his fuel gauges and the airplane's aerodynamics were actively trying to tell him.
The narrative connects perfectly.
Okay.
The 1951 Minnesota study showed us that impulsive aggressive tendencies exist naturally in our psychology. The Everyman case studies show us exactly how those unchecked impulses manifest as fatal errors in an airplane.
Yeah.
And the FAA study gives us the precise checklist of cognitive behavioral traits we have to actively guard against in ourselves.
So what does this all mean for you, the student pilot sitting in the left seat? The biggest takeaway here is that aviation safety is not just about your stick and rudder skills.
Not at all.
I mean, a perfect crosswind landing is incredibly satisfying, but it will not save your life if you took off with the wrong fuel tank selected because you let a radio call break your focus. True safety is about aggressively breaking the aero chain.
Absolutely.
It's about managing your cognitive load, strictly adhering to your checklists even when you are interrupted, and constantly monitoring your own mental state for those 5 red flags.
You're learning to operate the most complex, unpredictable system in the entire aircraft, your own mind. The physical muscle memory, that will absolutely come with practice.
The flying part gets easy.
It does. But the aeronautical decision-making, the discipline to follow the procedures when no one is watching, and the humility to use all your available resources, that is the hard work that actually makes you a safe pilot.
We started this deep dive talking about how human factors science includes everything from psychology to the physical design of the cockpit, all meant to help humans operate safely within their limitations. So I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Oh, I like this.
Next time you sit down in your training aircraft, before you even turn on the master switch, just take a hard, critical look around the cabin. Ask yourself, how does the specific layout of these gauges, these switches, and these levers subtly influence my own behavior and decision-making? Are these systems logically designed to save me from my own natural impulses? Or if I let my guard down and get distracted, are they setting a trap for my very own Captain Everyman moment?
That's it for this episode. Keep your wings level, your brain sharp, and catch you next time in the pattern. Thanks for riding with Propeller Breeze.